And we are now live.
All right.
All right, so let's call it the May 13th version of the DBA Special Public Policy and Market Development Committee.
All right.
Is anyone else having audio issues?
I think it's
Hey,
Mike's.
Just Mike.
Mike, you might need to call in on your phone. We can't hear you.
Or maybe it's your earbud.
Mike,
Anyone else having audio issues?
I think it's Mike. It's just Mike.
Mike, you might need to call in on your phone. We can't hear you.
Or maybe it's your earbud.
I can hear you. Let me click off and click back in.
Yeah, try that real quick, buddy.
Are you guys able to hear me now? Nothing.
It still sounds like your mic is
Yeah, really bad.
maybe in a toaster.
That's weird. Okay.
Or underwater.
Well, let me,
Yeah, if you just call them through your phone, I'm sure it'll be fine. And you can just do that audio. Oh, looks like it's gone.
That's my oldest.
Question. Where's my
Oh,
mask?
come on, come on.
Because I gotta go get my.
okay. Is that
Good,
better?
Mike? Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. Not sure what's going on. All right, where were we? Roll call. Heather, if you'd like to take the roll.
I can do that if you don't mind, Michael. This is
Sure.
Chad.
Sorry, Chad. Hey, I didn't see you on
Okay.
there. There we go.
How you doing? Okay,
All
ball
right.
line,
Here.
Clayton,
Here.
Hackney,
Here.
Kruger,
Here.
Mansfield. Mansfield. Councilmember Meadows.
Here.
Richter Perkins. Richter Perkins. Rosecrans. And Mayor Pro Tem Stevens.
Here.
That completes the roll call.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Now I believe we have to move to adopt the time limit for public comments. Each caller in the queue will have 2 minutes to address the board. At the end of the 2 minutes, they'll be placed back on mute. I think, do we have anybody joining us for public comment? Looks like we do have a number on there.
Yeah, I'll make a
Callers
motion.
will be Yeah,
Sorry. I'll make the motion to approve the limits as presented in the agenda.
I'll support.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, do we want to move on to the synopsis? Do we need a motion to pass the minutes from last meeting?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, let's move on to communications from the audience. It appears we have a caller with the phone number ending in 274. Would this caller like to participate in the communications from the audience portion?
Hey, this is Tom Fehrenbach here. Just calling into this meeting and here to listen. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to unmute me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. All right. Announcements, committee member comments. Lindsay, did you just have your hand up?
Well, I just wanted to address the things that I had sent via email, and I know that they're attached in the packet. But I would really like for us to start and hopefully relatively quickly have an idea of things that we can be doing to help specifically our restaurant, bar, and retail establishments as soon as the governor starts phasing things to open. And specifically, I would really like us to evaluate what we can do as the DDA to allow for parking for curbside in the alleyways for all of our businesses downtown, and maybe other public spaces that I'm not thinking of that would be similar to alleyways. And then I would also really like for us to be looking into ways to allow outdoor seating, and not just public spaces such as possibly closing a road like Albert, but also how we do short-term changes. And I don't know if it could just be blanket, because I don't want to be going site by site plan, but a lot of areas like Brookfield Plaza or Trowbridge is not in the downtown, and I realize that, and neither is somewhere like Big Apple Bagel. But if you think of places like that, I think it only makes sense that we start looking at ways to change site plans and parking requirements and allowing people to utilize what would be spaces for cars for outdoor seating. And so I don't know if it's like a blanket moratorium on things, or we just make a blanket change, like short-term change to the zoning code. But I know that there are a lot of tools, but they would be within the purview of what we do to make those recommendations specifically for the downtown. But I would be happy at trying to work with Planning Commission to get them to be citywide. So.
Support.
Sorry for it being long.
No, I support that, Lindsay, wholeheartedly. I love the idea. I know that restaurants are probably going to have to open with half capacity, have a lot of restrictions that'll be put in place with them. Having the opportunity to move out onto the sidewalk, shutting down Albert Street makes a lot of sense to me. Obviously, we can't shut down the parking there, but you know, from the parking down to MAC makes a ton of sense if we could put people on the sidewalk, use the road for pedestrian and bike access only. It just seems to make a lot of sense to me. And any area that we can accomplish that in our city, I think we should, because I think that you know, we don't know how long this is going to last with these restrictions on the restaurants being in place.
So I really would love to see us be very proactive about this. It's really important to me that like our community be at the forefront of helping shape what we want to see in Michigan, instead of waiting for the governor. I think it's easier to tweak things if we've got some plans, but I mean, I think we all realize that at some point things are going to start to open and we should really shape what we want to see. Or help businesses shape it. I want them to be the driving force.
I can tell you from a restaurant perspective, one thing that would be helpful in that sense would be if we are able to, or if we're being required to open at half capacity, to at least have our outdoor seating capacity not count towards that number. So that way we could still seat the same amount of people inside, but also be able to seat outside. I don't know that for our site specifically that, you know, we'll really be able to put any other tables anywhere, save for out back by the dumpster, which isn't the most beautiful area to dine in. So I don't know that that would do anything for us, but it's certainly helping. It would help to not have that, you know, 20 people were allowed on the patio to count towards our 50 overall, you know, capacity at 50%. So just a thought. But I think that this is kind of moving into our discussion on the outdoor dining stuff. So why don't we just sort of move into that portion of the agenda? Okay.
Sorry, I just felt like it was important that I address the specifics that I had sent via email for the public record. And I just sent supporting documentation and the thoughts that I just articulated to the group, but I wanted the group to be thinking about it. And there was not discussion in our email, the email that I sent, it was specifically those statements, but I wanted members to think about it before this meeting, just so anyone that might be listening clearly understands that. And those emails are available if someone wants to FOIA, or I will just send them to you if anyone has any questions about the email specifics for the wording.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Speaking only for myself, but I think it's a great idea. I think we should find every way possible to accommodate businesses during this time frame. We know they're all going to be hurting. And so whatever we can do to help them to succeed in this environment that we know is going to be messed up when we come out of this, I think we should look at all those things and be creative with our solutions. Think out of the box and come up with new solutions to what may face us coming out of this.
Yeah, I would agree.
Hey, Mike, do you mind if I chime in?
Please.
So, you know, I was talking to the city manager the other day, and we were talking about kind of the Albert Street closing, and I think in an email, maybe it wasn't an email that we got, I think it may have been just over the phone, we were talking about, you know, the idea that if we close Albert Street, what we're going to try and probably do is provide tables and then space them out to a point where it'd be a proper social distance. So Mike, speaking to your point of like making sure that seating, quote unquote, doesn't count towards capacity, you know, making sure, I mean, that street's closed. And then, you know, I think that your situation brings up an interesting point because, you know, you have the public parking that's right behind you. You got the park that's right behind you. You know, maybe there's an opportunity to open up some of that for for some public seating if there are areas in which restaurants are nearby public property. I definitely think that that's a good possibility. I will say, I think that that it's all well and good to want to think outside the box and all this stuff, but if you guys have specific ideas that you want to put forward, you know, I know that I read through some of the articles that were in there, and obviously, you know, Cincinnati itself, you know, was the inspiration for a big part of the Albert Street thing. But if there are any specifics that you guys want us to look at, just, you know, let us know, and I'm sure, speaking on behalf of Councilmember Meadows and I'm sure we'd be happy to look into them. And I mean, you know, already there's business support hopefully coming from the city, the DDA, and that hasn't passed yet, but I mean, we're looking towards every option to try and help small businesses. So.
So can everybody hear me?
Yes, Heather.
Okay, so I just want to give you an update from staff. So we've had a couple meetings, and this includes police, fire, public works, number of different departments at Public Works, David Haywood on our planning staff, and moving towards the first area we're looking at is Albert. And so we had another meeting this morning. Public Works is doing some design work to how this will look. And again, yes, they're talking about putting picnic tables out there, spacing them 12 feet apart. There'd also include some markings so people are aware of a 6-foot radius when getting up from the tables and moving around. They also need to keep a 12-foot lane, a clear path for emergency vehicles. And so they're going to incorporate that into the plan. There's also an ATV that has a stretcher on it and some other things. And so fire is thinking that they could bring that down here and actually store it. So in case there was an emergency, they could easily jump on the ATV, take the stretcher out, whatever it may be, to get whoever it is assisted. So potentially we're looking at the area just just east of the new parking garage entrance, heading east down Albert to MAC and closing off that area and having it closed at Grove. There may be some temporary gates that have to be installed. Again, this would be just to accommodate some of the emergency vehicles. But I just wanted to give you a heads up at this point where what we're looking at. We're looking at some signage for social distancing reminding, and also looking at some hand washing stations. They're going to be using these at the farmers market. And so that was brought up of maybe having those available.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Heather, for that update.
Yep.
That's fantastic. One other area that I love those ideas. One other area I think that we should consider would be, I don't know what number it is, the parking lot behind Campbell's in the Peanut Barrel.
The Bailey lot?
Bailey lot.
Yeah. I really think that it seems like we have a lot of, like from Brugger's to the Barrel. I mean, there's a whole bunch of little restaurants in there that tend to be smaller facilities. So I think we should consider like 50% of that lot. And then I would like us to look at what we can do to allow Trowbridge to do the same. Or not Trowbridge, but that's not our DDA, but Brookfield Plaza. And then, like I said, the private businesses such as like Sidebar, Big Apple Bagel, Reno's. So private space as well as public space. And then how difficult would it be to either require or allow every business that has alley space to designate a takeout curbside thing?
We can look into that. The alleys are designated for commercial traffic for all the deliveries because they can't do deliveries off Grand River.
Yep.
So we try to keep those clear. We've created a number of spaces around the different blocks for 15-minute free parking so that people can go into a restaurant, get takeout, and come out. But it's something we can look at. The only problem may be is if you have a summer that comes in and someone's car's parked there, they may get blocked in. And so that might not be the most convenient. But what I can do is share we can also share with all the businesses the metered spots that where people can use for a loading zone for takeout and that. Make sure that that information is available to the people when they're coming to pick up their takeout.
Okay.
Heather or David, when do you expect that the staff will have a specific proposal that's available for this committee to look at, or the DDA or the DMB, so that we can move as rapidly as possible on this?
Well, I think we'll probably see a drawing back in the next couple days from Public Works with the preliminary layout, and that will then be reviewed again by police, fire, and everybody to make sure. But we're trying to do this a quick turnaround, so this is all approved and ready. If things change at the end of May and restaurants are able to be open, our plan is to have this in place by then.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And maybe to piggyback onto what Mayor Pro Tem was talking about as far as the stuff back in Valley Court, I think it could be useful to just generally have more picnic tables back there because of the amount of people that I've seen over the last couple of weeks congregate back there. Maybe having actually like designed spots for people to be able to, hang with their family, but be far enough apart from others could be useful especially for farmers market days. And, it could be something that we could potentially utilize to, walk food out to people as well if they wanted to, call in an order, and we could bring it out to their table out there for them, though I wouldn't expect it to be dedicated to us by any means. But just a general, idea of having more seating options out there at this time in order to help people understand where they need to be social distance wise.
So, Heather, I have one question about how this outdoor seating on Albert works with alcohol sales. And if we were to, I love the idea of allowing someone like Crunchies to be able to utilize our public park space, but I am pretty sure that we don't allow alcohol in our public parks. But it's very important to me that if we designate these patio spaces, that people be able to serve alcohol.
That is something that we are looking into how to do. I know that it would probably be an editorial ordinance, but the city manager and I think everybody on council is very, we are all in the same opinion. So.
Okay, that's reassuring. Thank you, because that hasn't always been like that in council.
Go ahead, and Councilmember Meadows said.
Yeah, that's we do have an ordinance that prohibits, open alcohol in a public, location, and it's just as simple as changing the ordinance, especially if it's temporary.
Yep.
So that we can temporarily provide the ability to have alcohol on Albert in those public spaces, so that somebody can, let's say, go into one of the restaurants, get their order, come out, sit at a picnic table, and bring their beer with them. So I think that, certainly that's something that we're taking a look at right now.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to Mike's thing, because I want to just ask you a question, Mike. If you were able to, let's take your patio seating limited to whatever 20, and when this order is lifted, it requires some special spacing by restaurants in order to continue to serve customers. Would you use, or could you use, the area that you park cars in now, if we were able to allow that to happen, so that you could space some tables out there and still actually do some carryout service also through that area?
Yeah, I think that it's yeah.
But it's useful.
Right. Well, it would be more, at that point, it becomes more of an issue of whether or not we can, find parking places for my staff so that they don't have to pay for the day that they're here, and that's something that, we can try to work with DTN next door with, since we have that whole lot there now, at least until that's going to be developed, or until, something else, comes with that. Maybe if they were to allow me to have my staff park there without, for some nominal fee or whatever the case may be, I think it could be useful to use our back lot for setting up tables, in a socially distant sort of situation. The only problem would be us actually having to probably purchase tables to do that, which would just be another expense, but I mean, it's not necessarily something we couldn't do.
Well, I think the city would be happy to help you with DTN on that. That makes sense. I mean, it's an unused space at this point in time. And if we're dealing with this type of issue, trying to get our small businesses back up and running, seems to me that sitting down with DTN and making sure this happens would be a good idea.
I'm sure they'd be willing to work with us too. Yeah.
Excuse me,
Lindsay,
if I may.
Greg. Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you. I guess, I look at the fact that we still have money left in our budget for this year that we could acquire. Maybe it might make sense for us to make a recommendation to the formal DDA to set aside that money to help out with outdoor dining, whether it be planning, whether it be, stanchions, whether it be outdoor tables, to help businesses to get through this, because there will be a large expense involved either on the city's part or on the private owner's part. Maybe we could dedicate those funds to help facilitate this process.
So I have one question, because when I drive by Patriarch, I know that they store a lot of the picnic tables throughout the summer there. But I would have to believe that given the distancing, a fair amount of those tables, you can't have them all close together like you would typically at Patriarch. Is there a way to kind of shift things around a bit and maybe not have to dip into the budget?
So Public Works did, Kathy DeChambeau did share that they do have picnic tables and that they will be placed. But they would probably want to order some more, just because of the amount of them. So yeah, so that did come up of how many picnic tables we would need and those types of things. Okay. Because it does take some time to get picnic tables ordered, but knowing that this is the way that we're going to move forward, we can do that. The other thing to think about is we also talked about yesterday just the cleaning in that, and so that the DDA may want to consider also having someone out there to be able to wipe down the tables and disinfect them and that throughout the day. So when one group uses it and leaves, they can be cleaned off and another group could use them. So a couple things like that we can think about also.
So Heather, I have a question for you.
Yes.
So do you at this point have the necessary information to allow this body to make a recommendation of earmarking funds for specific uses for this project?
Yes.
Okay. To the DDA?
Yes.
Okay.
So so you're saying, I believe what Greg was saying is take some of the funds that are left that the DDA has set aside and look at a number of different things, but using those funds specifically for the outdoor dining.
And Mark, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I don't think you cut me off. I was asking specifically if you were talking about a recommendation to DDA. I wanted to ask a question though, because we have the facade improvement program, and I don't know if there's a chunk of money still sitting in that. But given what has happened, it seems to me that there might be other programs that we could take a look at the DDA, that we could take the money that we had set aside for that and utilize for some of these purposes. So if we're doing a recommendation, maybe it's to recommend to the DDA that they take a complete look at their budget to see what funds might be available to make all this work.
Okay, let me call Lindsay and Luke. They both have their hands up. Just Lindsay, do you want to go first and then Luke?
If we're looking at funding for Albert, I get that. But when we're talking about something at Valley Court, I would like us to explore using that from the Parks and Rec budget, please.
Well,
okay, Luke.
I think Great idea, and I'm right there with the council member, but specifically, and maybe Heather would know this, I believe that the money that we had earmarked for the outdoor facade is the money, or part of them, just went towards that grant. If not 100.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I'm sorry, Luke, you cut out. What did you say?
You hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just that I'm pretty sure that the money earmarked for the outdoor facade, like all that money went towards that grant. Am I wrong in that?
No, you're right.
No, that's correct. So what we did is staff at the last EDA meeting put together a list of items that included sidewalk money, monies that were in the budget that hadn't been allocated for a specific project yet, and the facade improvement program funds, and I believe the remaining art line item we had, and it was about $363,000, and the DDA has allocated a portion of that towards the business relief program. And the idea at that time was that they would leave the remaining funds available for whatever other projects they may want to support during this. So there are funds already earmarked for additional business support programs.
But there, I'd like to clarify, there's roughly at the most $30,000, correct?
70.
So the DDA earmarked $250,000 for the business relief program, 100 businesses at 2,500. And then you have a balance available from that. So I want to say it's about $70,000 you still have available.
Yeah, I believe it was 80 and then 10 grand for LEAP, so it would be 70.
Okay. But
Sounds about right.
So there are funds available.
okay.
So then do we want to make a formal recommendation to the full DDA board that this is what we want to do with that money? We want to earmark it to use for helping out businesses. Well, I mean, it's already obviously to help out businesses, but specifically to help outfit them with what they need or what the city needs in order to, open up the streets and the sidewalks and to use it for that type of stuff. Is that what we need to do?
Second.
Yes, Lindsay.
So I support that, but I'm really concerned about also it not coming. I don't know. I realize that cities are going to be facing big budget issues, but also the DDA moved as a group to wanting to get rid of the Evergreen property and not deal with that huge debt. And the council was the group that chose not to move forward on that. And so this is making me really concerned looking, 6 months to a year out and then looking down the road that we keep, putting everything on the DDA. We're the business people that are, that's the downtown portion of the businesses that are driving things in East Lansing. And it really concerns me that we continue to try to make fiscally conservative choices. And then everyone wants to dip into the funds from the DDA when, we have things like Parks and Rec. We're not opening our aquatic center, which typically costs us money from what I understand. I don't know. I feel like we continue to take from a group that is giving a lot back financially to the community.
I don't know what the Evergreen properties has to do with that, but it
has to do with our budget, and it's a huge chunk of our budget.
I understand that. I don't understand what it has to do with the current situation. I also would say that I don't think Councilmember Meadows or I suggested earmarking of these funds for this use, and I'm fairly certain that we all were okay with going forward with the Albert Street project. I mean, I think this is great. This is an extra source of revenue. Like if we get to the point where because we don't know what a lot of the end amounts are going to be, whether it's Parks and Recreation or it's our planning and building department, we don't know what our end amounts are going to be, what the effect of this crisis is going to have. So, I'm not really understanding. So do you not want to use the DDA funds for this? I mean, it's your guys' budget. It's not really.
I would just like to
I
get
think what I think
money
the
that we have. Or things that we have, the tools that we have. I just hesitate to continuously like be pushing things on the DDA to pay for. I don't know. I'm very concerned with some of the decisions. Go ahead, Mike.
I thought that what you were trying to state was that you wanted to, like when you specifically mentioned Valley Court, that you wanted to look at Parks and Rec's budget as well and possibly pull some funds from that in order to use towards some of what we're trying to do as a DDA as well. That's my understanding of what you were trying to say. Is that correct?
Yeah, and yes, I totally am, but I'm very hesitant to just allocate spending that last $70,000 right now. I mean, we are the tip of we are just at the very bottom of this hill. And I as someone who's trying to make really responsible choices on this DDA, and then I think our DDA as a whole, most of us are, but there are bigger decisions that other people make that are costing our DDA a lot of money. And I'm just concerned.
I'm not interested in spending the money that way, just because I think we should either hold on to it for now, or we should, again, not to be a broken record, but possibly give all that money back to the businesses equally in whatever fashion that they decide to use it or not. And also, it should be noted that we're going to have at least, I mean, there were only 75 people that applied, so that means that we have $2,500 grants coming back to us, correct?
Yes, there wasn't 100 applicants.
There was 100 applicants? I thought there was.
There was not.
So we actually have a lot more money than 70 grand, but I think we should just be holding on.
That along with whatever the board approves tomorrow.
Right.
Yep.
So I don't want to vote on this until I don't want to vote on this until we have an idea of exactly how much money it's going to cost just to set it up and have it all done. And I would like us to get creative with finding ways and to use picnic tables from Parks and Rec and other areas. And so yes, that does look differently for Patriarch Park, and it does look differently for our parks. But I think that we need to find some kind of balance. And I'm not saying that we go and take all of their picnic tables. I do not want that to ever come across as what I'm asking us to do. But I do want to see some of these numbers before we start just blowing the rest of the DDA budget.
I would agree with that.
Okay, so then as a clarification, are we not making that recommendation? Is that the intent then?
Make a motion to.
Okay, so are we gonna vote on the motion and probably just vote it down then? Is what I'm hearing from the majority.
So to be clear, I did not make a motion. I was simply asking the group if that was what the direction that we wanted to go, if that was what we were being instructed to do. And then Greg did throw a second in there, so it made it sound like a motion, but it was not a motion that I made.
I kind of liked it as a motion. Sorry about that. You guys, if you really want to have a formal motion, I mean, we can. I just don't really know what dollars we'd be actually putting forth to this. I just, if I'm not mistaken, our dollars expire at the end of this month. Am I mistaken in that?
Expire? They would just carry over to the next fiscal year as of June 30th.
And though they don't go to the general fund, they stay within the DDA?
Yes, our money always carries over. We always have a carry over our fund base.
Okay, well, you know, I don't think we have to, I do think that it's important that we put something forth to the formal DDA, that we're in support of this at some financial level, whatever that is. I don't think we have to define it, but that we'd like to dedicate money to a project going forward with this. I don't pretend to know how to put that into a motion.
I'm not.
Well, go ahead, Lindsay.
Oh, you go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking that, city staff is working on putting together the initial drawings and the initial plan of to work with and working with Department of Public Works on getting all that together. So I feel like, and I know, Mark, you asked about the timeline to Heather. I don't recall what the response was, if there was a response as far as the timeline goes, but I think that, we need to wait till we see what that is. And Heather can also include our other suggestions that we've made as far as the different areas where we'd like to see things happening in that discussion with Public Works. And then we can get an idea of financially what we're looking at as far as how many picnic tables we're going to need, or how many, stanchions, or the different stuff that we could use to make this happen. And once that happens, then I think we can come back and actually make some sort of motion to use a, X amount of dollars towards that. But I don't think that there's any real way to make a motion at this point, other than we can make a comment that we discussed this at our meeting, and make sure that the full board is aware of our intentions.
Well, you could say that.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
The committee, no one on the committee was opposed to the idea of closing Albert and utilizing it in some manner that would benefit businesses. And I think that's
Sure.
That's a strong enough statement. I would be very reluctant to support any kind of motion that talked about spending money until we have an actual proposal in front of us.
Right.
We can sort of look at and see what the appropriate contribution from both the city and the DDA might be.
I would support
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Concur.
And just one note, I just wanted to clarify also, or let you know, is that Bailey Court did come up in the discussion. Public Works mentioned maybe being able to add some additional picnic tables in that area. So that is something that Public Works is looking at also, is expanding the seating over Bailey Court Park.
Great.
Can we make sure to include exploring other areas, not just Albert?
Yeah.
Specifically the Bailey parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
And then how long do you think it would take for you to have something back regarding private parking lots and private space?
I would refer that question to David Haywood, because that's going to impact maybe some site plans and different requirements for structures based on the use of the building and how many parking spaces are required to have available. So David, can you speak to Lindsay's question? Are you with us?
Yeah, I can give it a shot. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I think when we talk about this whole concept of using public right-of-way space for outdoor seating and alcohol consumption, I think it's a little easier to deal with because we can tool ourselves to allow for it. And I think how that separates it is that the private business can remain how they function, and then people can just take that off site. So it'd be like carry out, you go in, buy what you need, carry it out, you go somewhere and sit down and have a good time. But if you start expanding your operations on site, then I think it's a little trickier because it has, I think, implications in the realm of liquor license, state liquor license requirements, health department requirements, and then, as Heather mentioned, site plan and special use permit implications. So it becomes a little trickier to work with that. But we're starting that conversation. We're trying to figure out what's the easiest path forward for those situations as well.
Well, I think there certainly could be issues with liquor license stuff. The serving of alcoholic beverages outside of your designated area is certainly something that the MLC doesn't necessarily look favorably upon. But I guess I'm not quite sure how the city ordinances may or may not trump that as far as like the ability to have it in a public space, such as Valley Court or along Albert Street. So yeah, I don't know what the difference is there.
Well, I think the difference is that we can, in kind of a quick brushstroke, like I think Councilmember Meadows mentioned it, retool our code to allow for that kind of thing. And it only affects our policy for the most part. But when it's an individual site basis, then there are layers, like I mentioned, there are layers of regulatory agencies that come into play, and we can potentially start talking about ways to, I don't know if it's possible to say, we're not going to enforce certain things. But for example, when we issue a special use permit for alcohol consumption, one of the requirements is that you have to have and obtain and maintain a state liquor license. So if you are operating outside of what they would require, then it's a complicating factor then on our side, because it's a direct violation of that. So we have to find some way to kind of sort that out and find a path forward that we agree to. So that make it just,
right. I think the concern that I would have would be, obviously if you open up a park and allow them through the city to, or a street and allow them to be able to consume alcohol, that's one thing. Having a restaurant that's able to actually serve alcohol out in that area or sell alcohol to go, I think is a different question, especially when it comes to mixed cocktails versus beer and wine, because, for example, I can sell, cans of beer to go, and I can can my own beer and sell that to go, but I can't can a cocktail and sell it to be able to be consumed elsewhere, and so I'm not sure if that lies within the city's jurisdiction or not, but because that seems more like an MLCC thing at this point that's statewide, and so I don't know what the difference is, but just something else to think about.
I would be,
Lindsay.
This is Lindsay. I would be very interested in us having some kind of discussion with the Ingham County Health Department. And it would probably be you, David, I guess, but I would like to direct staff to have these discussions with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission and with the Ingham County Health Department, so that we could be at the forefront trying to push for, for people to be able to do, and it could be something short term, as long as the emergency order, whatever we have from the state of Michigan, if the state has rules and we're still in a state of emergency to some degree, I don't know why we couldn't have something that would sunset with that, but obviously we would need to have support of those two bodies. But I think that we should be pushing for it, because I have to believe that we're not the only community in Lansing or in Ingham County or Michigan that would like to see this.
Okay, so I guess, does that conclude our discussion at this point on the outdoor dining? Shall we move on to fees for the row application, or do we want to continue discussion here or make any sort of recommendation? Okay. Okay, moving on. Row application fees.
Yes, so this was also brought up. So the use of the right-of-way for businesses to have outdoor seating, the application fee is $50, and then it is $50 per seat. And so there was discussion about from board members about making a recommendation to City Council to waive these fees. And so I put this on the agenda as requested for this committee to discuss.
I thought we already did that.
Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, I thought we eliminated them.
It's just
It was my understanding. it was my understanding that the right-of-way fees weren't included. I had
It was
inquired
just
about
the
that.
restaurant fees.
Entertainment.
But maybe the person who told me that was mistaken.
There was a waiver of essentially all the business taxes and the right-of-way fees that are related. Those are entertainment fees, and those we waived those as well.
Yeah, Mark, are those under the same purview as entertainment fees?
Yeah.
If they are, then those are waived. If they're not, then they might be a separate thing. Because I don't remember specifically mentioning right away.
I can tell you right now, that was my intention, that these are.
Oh no, I'm fully in favor. I don't have an issue with it. Heather?
So then let's go ahead and just make the formal recommendation then to waive those fees. We'll push it forward to the board, and if it's not already done.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll verify that. Lindsay has her hand up.
No, I just wanted to hear what you had to say because I was under the impression that they were separate from entertainment license fees. Like they're all different license fees. But from what I read,
When you say you, who are you talking to?
What council?
When you
sorry, I wanted to hear
you
it.
said you,
Heather.
and you're pointing at somebody, but
Heather. Sorry. Okay. Technical stuff.
I think we're all on the same page here.
okay.
Yep, I'll follow up
So
on that.
Thanks.
Okay. So we've officially made the recommendation, or the motion was made, and then I believe it was supported. Is that correct?
By who and who?
I made the motion.
I'll support.
Yeah.
Councilmember Meadows made the motion. Luke supports. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Nobody's opposed. Motion carries. All right. Outdoor patio hours and audible live music discussion. Noise violations specifically.
Yes, so at the March 11th committee meeting, staff was asked to look into how many businesses within the DDA district had received noise violation tickets. So I worked with the police department. They went back to 2015. There were 261 tickets, noise violation tickets issued within the DDA district. None of them were for businesses. So it was residential properties that received those. Some of the apartment buildings, some of the fraternity sororities in that area. So that had come up during the discussion of if noise is a problem in the DDA district when you were talking about requesting expanded outdoor seating hours past midnight.
Great, thank you for following up on that. Is there any more discussion on the outdoor patio hours? Seeing none, I guess we'll move on to business support programs.
So again, I think this was probably mostly discussed already with the idea of pursuing some outdoor dining. So
okay.
If there's anything else though that the committee wanted to discuss, any suggestions or anything else you wanted us to look into?
Are there any guys who have businesses downtown? Any other ideas?
Actually, I do have something. I was thinking about this, and I was wondering if there's a way that we could actually, I don't know, it's hard to do, but is there a way that we could actually brand ourselves as a safe downtown? You know, like somebody who, you know, practices safe habits. Maybe we have hand sanitizing stations on street corners and, you know, encourage people to wear masks when in public spaces and things like that. I mean, I know we can't require people to do these types of things, but can we provide the resources necessary to have a safe downtown. And I don't know if that does anything for our downtown. I just know that personally, you know, when I go into businesses and I see people without masks, and I've seen it happen at other restaurants in town when I've been getting takeout, and the person waiting on you isn't wearing a mask. And to me, you know, that's bothersome, and that makes me kind of not want to frequent that business. So, but everybody has different ideas about this. I don't think that once we come out of our lockup, so to speak, that it will be business as usual in the downtown. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud and kind of looking for some ideas, or if there's any validity to actually doing something like that.
Luke, no, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I kind of mentioned that at the last DDA meeting, that the few businesses I've gone into, it was almost alarming to me how little they don't care right now. And that includes, or actually has been entirely downtown East Lansing businesses, because I don't think I've been on one since I've been, you know, locked up for the last couple months. But yeah, to the point where I don't even personally, I'm not ordering takeout right now or picking up food because I just don't trust it entirely. I would love to figure out a way to educate people more to yeah, I mean, branding ourselves as like a safer downtown actually might put us ahead of the curve in some way.
I just wonder if, you know, having encouraging people to wear masks. I know that there's been a big push from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services to mask up, so to speak. I just wonder if there isn't something we could look at doing possibly with them. I know that they would love to probably have a poster child for a healthy Michigan. Whether it's masks, hand sanitizing stations on street corners, you know, just looking out for our community and looking out for our citizens. I just think that's kind of a social responsibility we have.
I fully support that. And I think that we should definitely be saying things to try to encourage these businesses to do this. I do not personally feel comfortable passing any ordinance that would like require it.
Oh, absolutely not. We're all in agreement with that. I don't think we should do that, but I think anything we can promote or encourage this type of behavior that is safe and healthy, you know, that's what we should do.
So I would personally be happy, I know, imagine this, supporting possibly putting in our budget a small amount of money for signage and for hand sanitizing stations. I think I would be comfortable spending our budget money on something like that to try to help encourage people to, because I think that when you encourage people to use safer practices like that, they tend to feel more comfortable. And so if that makes people feel more comfortable coming downtown, I think that's a great message to send.
Agreed.
But I think that we have a duty as other business owners to just gently encourage each other to do things that help us get back to some kind of normal as soon as possible. So I mean, I'm happy with us coming on the record saying, hey, we're hearing this from our community. Can you please make sure that you have your staff wearing masks and gloves and things like that, and pushing that message. But I think that we need to do little things that would help support that with our budget. So we need a motion. Do you want a motion to like, do we need a motion for Heather to like find out how much it will cost to make some signage or?
Well, I think that we probably ought to just hear from everybody and kind of go around and see if they, you know, if they have a little bit of a different take on it. You know, we need to solicit any and all opinions. I think that it's really important that we do it. You're absolutely right. I don't think that, you know, regulation is the answer, but I think encouragement really of that this is the right thing to do, not only for yourself, but for everybody that you live with. It's a social responsibility, and you should do these things. That's my opinion.
Well, if you go in somewhere and they don't have masks on, then let's start asking people, do you need help finding masks? I mean, I know that we have 2 local sewers who have made masks for all of our business. And we were one of the first businesses in town that had people wearing masks out in public, because I had a small stash from SARS. So. But yeah, just we need to support people.
I think that's interesting. And also I think that, you know, to Luke's point and to your point, I mean, if you're going into a restaurant and you're being served by somebody, or if they're coming to your car to give you takeout or whatever the case may be, and they don't have a mask on or gloves, you know, you could certainly let them know that you would prefer to see that in the future. I mean, I know that I would, if I was going somewhere with that. You know, for us, we require our staff to have gloves and masks on when they're taking out the takeout stuff to everybody. And, you know, we're going to continue to do so as long as, you know, this thing has any kind of legs to it and prevalence. So, but that being said, you know, I don't know that we, you know, I think that the market will bear, so to speak, you know, for those restaurants that aren't doing it, and people like Luke and myself and you, Lindsay, aren't going to support those restaurants if they're not doing it. And so, you know, there's certainly a contingent of people that clearly don't give a, you know, I won't go on record, but thinking of the Owasso Barber and, you know, some other restaurants that clearly are in defiance of everything right now, but, and that they're certainly still getting support. So, you know, I don't know, it's a, man, it's a weird time right now.
I agree with that. I think that we've never seen a more divided country in our lives.
Yeah.
Well, what are some practical solutions? Can we look at, I mean, is there a way to figure out how much hand sanitizer would cost? Is safe? And, I mean, could we just send
It's hard to come by as it is right now.
You know, could we just eat? I wouldn't be opposed.
I don't know about the.
Sorry. Like, I mean, we could make a formal recommendation right now that we email the DDA and talk about those health concerns. Like, say that the DDA recommends that we do these things, and if they're having trouble doing these things, to contact us. And then that way we, you know, if we figure out that they're in desperate need of masks, then maybe we throw some money to it, like Lindsay suggested. You know, something like that. Like, I mean, I would be in favor of, you know, formally writing a letter that, or drafting a letter that we send out to the DDA and DNB, and then seeing what happens from there.
It just kind of feels like, though, that anybody who doesn't have a mask right now doesn't want to have a mask. You know, they're not that difficult to come by. I mean, I know that it can be frustrating to have to deal with it on a daily basis, or remember to bring it with you, or whatever the case may be. But, you know, I think the businesses that you're seeing that aren't using them are they don't agree, or they don't want to, you know. So, but I'm not saying we can't send them a letter, or, you know, make a statement stating that, you know, we would appreciate them if they were to do this. But I also am not sure that, you know, having hand sanitizing stations around town is necessarily going to make people feel any better about doing anything anyway. I don't know. They just might be more of a pain in the butt than anything else to have to deal with.
Yeah, could be.
Well, as part of the Albert Avenue outdoor dining, we are looking at signage. So maybe if we want to include additional signage in other areas, that's something we can use those same signs and post them in different areas of the downtown, just reminding, you know, customers and that. If you're looking at more from as addressing something to the businesses, I definitely think that you'd want to make that recommendation to the full board and get their feedback. So.
Sure. And I guess let me sort of retract what I said there briefly. if we are putting out picnic tables onto Albert Avenue, for example, or into Valley Court, I don't have a problem with having hand sanitizing stations in those areas or hand washing stations or that type of thing. I think that would be actually kind of a cool thing to do. I guess I was more thinking, you know, along Grand River as you're walking, you know, sitting at the corner, you know, oh, I guess I should sanitize my hands. You know, I don't foresee that being a thing necessarily, but I agree with, you know, having them in the food, the areas where food's being served.
Yes, and that is our plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the plan.
Well, if that's a problem, I think we're good. If we're looking into signage and hand sanitizing for specific outdoor areas, I think we're all all we can do right now.
Any more discussion on business support programs? All right, moving on to concessionaire program changes.
Just a clarification. So Lindsay had stated she wanted to support a small amount of money for signage and hand sanitizer. But at this point, are we just going to take a step back from that? Does the board want staff to prepare a memo on the behalf to the board asking for this type of support, or is this more just discussion?
I think it's more discussion in that, but I think it's, you already stated that you were looking into it as staff to see what it would cost for signage and hand sanitizing for the Albert area. Yes. I think that can just be duplicated into any other area that we're looking at putting this type of stuff. So as long as staff is continuing to do that, I think, Lindsay, does that satisfy your request? If she's there, I don't know where she went.
I think she just went off.
I think she's gone. Okay. Okay, so I think we can move on to concessionaire program changes.
Right. So again, this is from your March 11th committee meeting. You had asked staff to prepare the changes that are recommended and then forward them to the DDA. So this is just a follow-up to that. There's a markup version and a clean version of that. Just due to the amount of items we have on our agenda tomorrow, I did put this forward at this moment. I thought at our next DDA board meeting, we would have this as an item for the DDA to recommend approval of. So this policy resolution would be replaced. It would be 2020-2. And just to highlight the areas, the application review and appeals. There used to be an advisory committee that was that reviewed all the concessionaire applications, and the committee at your March 11th meeting had recommended that the applications just go directly to the DDA, and so that's been included. Again, we've made a few changes where it referenced that advisory committee, and then the other change is we went ahead and removed the pilot program, even though it was listed here as a separate program with a date ending in 2019. So if we're doing these other changes, decided it makes sense to remove it at that time. So the pilot program will be removed as part of this also.
Great. Okay, any other discussion from the committee?
Motion, or do we need a motion to recommend for this for the DDA?
I believe we already, did we not at the previous meeting, or do we actually have to recommend these specific changes? Heather?
There was a recommendation to make these changes at the last meeting.
Great.
So that's definitely.
Sounds good. Thanks.
So we should be
Cool, so we're all good. All right, any other discussion? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Or
Who moved
All those
and
in
who
favor?
supported him?
I myself moved it. Luke Hackney supported.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you
Bye, guys.
tomorrow.
Good to see everybody. Stay safe.
You as well.